Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. My name is Angelo, and well, you're here because you already read the title of the video, which has to do with the hardware unbox video. And I want to start clarifying that I'm not trying to say anything bad about them. I'm just trying to give my point of view on something they touch today, and I don't agree. Well, it's not that I disagree. I just think they are not painting the whole picture. And let me explain what my point is about this video. The video that is called "Is DLSS worth it using 1080p NVIDIA DLSS versus 1080p native?" So, what's my problem with that video and where I'm trying to go with this? So, the question part starts from a weird situation because DLSS, why does people use DLSS? There is one clear reason why people use DLSS, and it's to get more performance while not losing too much image quality, right? I don't think the point of DLSS is to make the image look as good or better than native. It's to make it look as good as possible. Yes, I know there is DLAA, but this is we're talking about DLSS, okay? So the whole point is that maybe each person has their own tolerance to what performance they want from games. Some won't ever play at 30, some won't only play at 60, and so on. But whatever frame rate you like to play to, or you're willing to play, be 30, 40, 50, or 60, you get to those frames with a combination of hardware and settings on the game. So let's say you're trying to play something and you set the settings the lowest you can, or the way you would like to play. So you have two options there. It's either lower the settings more or maybe activate DLSS. So if your resolution is 4K, of course DLSS is going to look better because it starts from like 1440p, which has a lot more information to reconstruct. However, when you're playing from 1080p, you start with 720, which is a less than 1 million pixel. To reconstruct an image that is 2 million pixels. So it's basically doubling the information, right? But the question that you have to wonder is where are you losing more detail, by lowering the settings on the game or by just lowering the resolution, in this case DLSS? But also the point is that they say, well, the conclusion teams comes that, well, only in certain games he will use DLSS because other games it look worse and so on. But if you are trying to use DLSS, it's because you have no alternative to get the performance you want. Or maybe, yes, there is an alternative that is not explained by them, and that's the part that I don't agree with the video, and I think it lacks a little bit of information. So what you're seeing here is 3 images of the game The Last of Us Part 1, which they use in their testing, right? So on the left side, you're going to see the 1080p native image. On the middle, you're going to see the 900p image, and then on the right, the 1080p DLSS image. Why 900p? Well, because if you are not getting the frame rate you want to play your game at 1080p, your option will be to lower your resolution. And the next resolution, let's say, is 900p, which is a little bit better than 720, right? So it's a point in the middle. And because 1080p quality mode will give you around the same or better performance than playing a 900p native. So of course, if you have the option to play a 1080p native, it will always be preferable than having to use DLSS quality. But you're not using DLSS because you want to improve image, you want to improve performance. So there is no many options you have available to improve performance to you other than lower the settings, and maybe you're already at the lower settings and still not getting that performance you want, either to make the game playable at 30 or to get to 60 or whatever is the frame rate of your preference. But the point is that it's either 1080p native. He said, oh well, I would prefer to play 1080p native. Yes, obviously you will prefer to play a 1080p native, but if you are not getting the frame rate, what do you do? So it's either 1080p DLSS or the next option that is lowering the actual native resolution to 900p. Otherwise, there is no many or more options available to you. So that's what I want to show, because I don't think they're showing the alternative. They just get to the conclusion that, oh, well, you know, native is better. Of course it is. But what options do the person trying to play with DLSS has? So today I'm going to show you 4 games that I have been testing on these different resolutions to try to get to and show to you that yes, 1080p DLSS is worth it. It is, because what you are trading to get that performance is better than the alternative, that is to play a 900p. Okay, so as you can see here, we are gaining some FPS, and as we can see here, 900p and 1080p quality in DLSS has sort of the same performance. So out of the way, we can already see a small difference in this game. This game has a very soft image, so it's not going to show the biggest difference, okay? Because you can see here that the details on the brick texture are much better defined on the DLSS image, for example. So let's play. Let's put some movement. It's not synchronized at the beginning, because I synchronize normally on a different part, and because, well, this is very hard to synchronize game, then it's not going to be like perfect, right? Okay, so we can see here, as I said, this is a very soft image game, so we are not going to get the same quality everywhere. Here, even here, you can see that both of them, you can read them just fine. But if you check, for example, things like this texture is more complete on the 1080p DLSS than 900p native, okay? So let's just watch a little bit of this video. Let's not stop too much. I already recorded the Spanish video and it took like 20 so minutes to do it, so I don't want you to be so long on this one. So we're going to be checking some parts of this video that I already know. So let's look here at the center. There is going to be like some sort of verge or something like that, and you're going to see how much it shimmers at 900p. Look here at the look at this area. You can already see it's more complete here, but look at how it's going to be shimmering. Look at this, for example, and this, and look at the shimmering here and here. I don't know if YouTube is going to destroy that, but even if we get very close, you can see that this is more complete than the 900p version. The 1080p is clearly the better one, but if you had to choose, obviously 1080p DLSS is going to be much better than the alternative, which is 900p. Now you can see that we are always keeping around the same performance, okay? That's very important. Now in this area here, we can see some of the things I was saying. Look, here, this here is more complete, more pleasing to the eye than this version here. You can see this is more broken. But look at the lights, okay? Look how they shimmer, even in the 1080p, and here they don't shimmer. They're much better there, right? So let's get a little bit far. Look at the performance. You can see the performance there. It's obviously not exactly the same because it's not exactly the same area, but you can see. Now let's look at this part of the image here while they are approaching. You see how more shimmery it is in 900p, and look how stable it is here. So yeah, that's part of what DLSS does that you get, and the advantages you get that you don't get, for example, with a 900p resolution, which is one of the things I've been saying about this. Look at here. Look, this looks more stable as image-wise. You can see that detail-wise, even if it's not by much, the 1080p DLSS image shows you more hair, more details in the hair, more details on the face that the 900p image does, and it looks, even in some cases, better than the 1080p native image. Other than that, I won't say that this is a game that has a very different appeal. You can see here her beard shimmers a little bit compared to the DLSS. So for me, the DLSS looks better. When we see here this, there is not much different, other than maybe we're looking for a little bit more pixelated look, but that's not, we'll say it's not a big deal. So what we're going to do now is open the second game I have already here, which is Avatar. Okay, let's go to Avatar for a second. Now once again we can see and start here looking by these three images that yeah, there is not too much difference, but the 1080p DLSS looks a little bit better. But one thing is that we have a lot better performance than the 900p images. So still 1080p DLSS is still worth it. So let's go a little bit back. Okay, and let's look, for example, at this area here. So as you can see in the movement, we have some ghosting over here and a little bit over here. But it's not such a big deal compared to the fact that even at 900p, as you can see here, we get some ghosting and a lot of it at 1080p. And that's using this is native. Well, it has a TAA solution. So people talk about ghosting on DLSS, but they forget that even the native TAA implementation can have some ghosting. Okay, so let's look here, and you can see that here we can see some of these parts being created, while here they're completely invisible and we cannot look at that. Okay, and in terms of performance, once again, we can see we are getting better on 1080p DLSS than on any other area. So yeah, in this case, I'll say that the difference is not as big, but we have better performance. And considering that we have a little bit of advantage of 1080p DLSS, I would still prefer to use 1080p DLSS than 900p native, which is the alternative that I will have to be able to get to the frame rate I want. Once again, now let's try a Spider-Man Miles Morales, okay? That's the next game I have prepared. They have used it, and I also have it here. Let's wait for it to load. It's taking. Okay, so now we have a Spider-Man. This is the intro because I can sort of synchronize it, even though the 1080p image glitch out and unsynchronize from the rest of the game. However, as you can see here, starting with this, the images are very similar. There is, I don't know if it's a bug or what, or it looks better, but as you can see, we can clearly see here this and not this. So I don't know if that has something to do with the depth of field, you know, that is resolution dependent, and because internally it's rendering at 720p, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But as you can see here, we already can see some difference. The hair, I have to say, looks better at 900p than at DLSS 1080p. However, for this fur on his jacket, I will dare to say that it looks better, the 1080p version DLSS. And you can see how much it shimmers. You see there is more fine detail here than there is a 900p. So I would prefer this. And for the shimmering, you can see that it shimmers on both 900p and 1080p DLSS. Look. And it's, from my point of view, it's as good or as bad in both versions. So you'd have to pick your poison. But as I said, the hair looks better in the 900p version. You see, let's shimmer in there. That's probably the way it works internally. The hair has to do with the resolution. But here, for example, this is something simple, but you can see it's a little bit more detail here. You can see the holes more clearly than the 900p. And in terms of performance, well, it's here. It's not as good as 900p, but it's much better than 1080p. So yeah, we are in that middle point where we get something out of the best of two worlds. Keep going. As you can see, this is what I was saying. I think there is a bug on DLSS with the depth of field that it makes it less. I think it has to do with the resolution. But let's keep watching, and I'm going to show you some other differences you can see in this game. Here, there is really not much detail. It's a little bit more pixelated, but nothing really big. Here, it's clear that you can clearly see here. Well, it's still not very detailed here. And it has nothing to do with the depth of field in this case. Now here is 1.3 where you can see that the DLSS version looks more detailed than the 900p version. There is an area that we pass here where we can see there is a lot more details in this than there is here. And it's even more details than here, but this one has more details than 900p. So as you can see, this is quite a funny one because we are actually getting more details there than we're getting on the 900p. like actual real more detail. As you can see, it started glitching out on some areas and now it's not very well synchronized. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to compare with the 900 1080p, but well, we're going to concentrate on the DLSS and 900p version, okay? So these two are the ones that we're going to be taking care. And you can see the performance-wise is quite similar. And here is going to be a very funny area that we're going to be checking, because you can see here in the bottom of the gear that you can see more details on the gene that you can see here in the 900p version. But the funny part is that that is going to be repeated on other areas. You're going to see here when he comes to pass something, there is a take. Let me see if they show it or I just already passed it. Should have a close-up here. So you see here, you can clearly see all the details that compose the trousers, the pants, depending how you said in each place. You can see that there were a lot more details in there. Okay, you can also see here more detail here in the letters of the grocery store than you can get from here. So that's another difference right there. There is the shimmering. I'm telling you, you can see here that they both have that shimmering as part of the. There is not much difference in any other areas, but for example here this has a lot more details than this one here. You can read clearly open 24 hours. You can clearly read it here, but it's not as clear as this one, as the same as with the open sign. One funny thing about this is that there is going to be, you're going to see something in here that happens on maybe on all versions. So look at the sign, this one that says not public restrooms here. Look at the sign. This happens in the 900p and 1080p, but 1080p you're not going to be able to see it because it's unsynchronized. But look at this. Look at this. Look, oh, look what happens. This game has some blurriness when the door is moving, while here is perfect. It's no problem. Looks, you cannot read that. Well, it moved. Let me put it to the end again. You see here you cannot read that, while here you can. The same happened here at 1080p. Huh? So DLSS is doing something to improve here. You cannot read the follow us, other notice, or nothing. And here you can read clearly no animals and everything else. So now let's open the last game I have to show, which is just Cyberpunk 2077. And the reason I chose this game is because they have benchmark where I can show you exactly what I want to show. And so they are completely synchronized. So we're starting from the end. I'm going to move it. But to start, you can see how these trees over here are more detailed in the DLSS version than on the 900p version. That's just the start there, that you can see a big difference. This you are going to see when we move and go back. Oops. Okay, so we are here, and you can see also the performance, as I was saying. 27 for 1080p, 34 for 900p, and 40 for DLSS quality, which shows that in this game, DLSS gives more performance than the actual this game. And that's probably because I'm using ray tracing here, and ray tracing depends on the number of rays you're using. And because DLSS is starting from 720p, evidently is having to calculate less ray tracing. But that shows you how much of a difference also DLSS helps when it comes to games that use ray tracing in this case. So, okay, let's see how these games behave, right? So there is no much difference. This is a game also with a very soft image, but you are going to see some difference that I'm going to point out to you. So here, well, they are, all of them are really, you can read them, no big deal. There is not that big difference here. So let's keep moving. But let's start here, for example. Look at what happened here. This one is hard to read. It's more harder than this one. You see? But that's going to be more clear when we move ahead. Here, there is essentially look at this. Well, I can't say there is so much of a difference, but look at this. You see how this one looks much better than this one? And that's not just that. Look at the bottles on the back. Look how they look compared to this one. Look at the bottles. Look at the sign. You can see that it looks much better in the 1080p image. So let's get inside this. I can say there is a big, huge difference. However, I will say there is a slight difference here for 1080p, some maybe more detail things, but not that much. I will say that is a big deal or anything like that. I can see any big difference here or here. You know, they look quite similar. To be honest, all of the images are quite similar, at least in this particular situation. Let's keep going. Okay, we can stop here and we can go to the back. You can see here something that I'm going to show you. Look, there is not a huge deal of difference, right? It looks mostly the same in all of them. However, look at what happens. We are going to get to a point. Okay, look. We have the grill that we couldn't see before here and somehow here, but not here. There is not enough pixels for us to show the grills that is in front of the fan yet. So I know this is a very small differences, but what I'm trying to show is that if you have to use DLSS at 1080p, it's worth it because you are still going to get a much better image than the alternative, because the alternative is not either 1080p native or 1080p DLSS. That's not the alternative, because the reason you want to use DLSS is because you want more performance, that you need to play the game at your comfortable levels, while native is just okay, it's just native, but you're not getting the performance you want. So the real difference and the solution here is either lower to 900p or play a 1080p DLSS. So is it worth it? Of course it is worth it from my point of view, and that's what I feel is missing from the hardware unbox video, because between native and DLSS I will mostly always prefer probably native. Okay, because I don't know what level of quality, if it's going to introduce ghosting and so on and so on. The reason I use DLSS is because I want more performance, because maybe I'm playing at 4K 45 50 FPS and I want that 4K 60 stable FPS experience. So I need to activate DLSS quality, for example. So it's not because I prefer to use DLSS quality necessarily, it's just because I need to. So when you are going to be using 1080p DLSS, it's because you need that performance. So it's not as if it's worth it, it's if it's worth it compared to the alternative. That's the comparison they should have done it, not compared to 1080p native. Is in a situation where you need, and you can see here, okay, this is unplayable. We are not playing here. Okay, 25. I can play at 30, but 25, but less than 30, I can play. Even 900p, which would be the alternative, is still not enough. But then DLSS quality brings you at least to those 30 to 40 FPS that will allow you to play the game at least a minimum comfortable level. And that's why I think the premise that a hardware unbox starts, which is that 1080p or native, is 1080p DLSS worth it, is wrong. Because what I think is that you need to test it against the alternative to get the performance. That is the reason that why you activate DLSS. So is 1080p DLSS worth it against 900p native, which it will give you the same performance? That's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of DLSS. Otherwise, why would you activate DLSS? So I hope you understand the point I'm trying to make here, and why I feel that that's the part that they are missing. Because people are going to say, okay, if I can get 60 FPS, because according to you, DLSS 1080p is not worth it, what can I do to get those 1080p without you sending me to buy new hardware? and I am already on low. What can I do? Because even if you are not on low, maybe you lose less quality by just using DLSS quality than by lowering the graphics in the game. Going from medium to low or going high to medium may end up by giving you a worse situation where you lose shadows and other things, while with DLSS you're only losing a little bit of resolution or maybe some shimmering here and there, but the graphics will be much better. At least that's my perception or how I see these things, okay? So I hope you like this video, and as always, if you haven't, please subscribe, like the video, and see you on the next one.